Ha ha ha. Hi everyone. Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for a review of the new Jessica Pratt album, Quiet Signs. California-based singer and songwriter Jessica Pratt, the last time I talked about her music at length, I think was back in 2012 when she dropped a debut record that showed a lot of promise. This album was a pretty simple but effective recording of Jessica's very calming and serene fingerpick guitar, along with her very tiny, nasally, incredibly unique voice, which sounded almost alien or enchanted. There wasn't a whole lot of layers or density to this record, but it made up for that with some very solid songwriting. Again, along with a voice and a style that just made her someone to watch closely into the future. Her follow-up record in 2015 featured a better recording, more instrumentation, less blemishes. It was definitely more refined, it was more pleasant, but it was somehow just missing something. I guess occasionally the extra layers of instrumentation and vocals did come together somewhat awkwardly, especially on the song Game that I play. Generally, it's a pretty pleasant album. It checked a lot of the same boxes the debut did, but somehow just felt less bewitching, less magical, and instead sometimes tedious, sometimes winding. Even with all of the extra bits of instrumentation, it was not as smoothly executed. Still, from that sophomore record, Jessica did give us quite a bit to look forward to, and Quiet Signs is a pretty nice little album, a beautiful little record, and I do mean little, as this album is essentially just 9 tracks and 27 minutes. There's even a time-killing intro on this record that is essentially an awkward piano version of the same melody and chord progression played throughout the very next track. Not a whole lot of time to work with on this one. Let's start dishing out the fire as soon as possible. And honestly, by the time we're halfway through the first track, that very same melody and chord progression, I'm kind of sick of it at that point because it's grown quite tedious. But still, it does not take very long on this record for Jessica's sound and song quality to pick right up. I'm not sure what it is, but Jessica's incredibly unique voice just soaked in the amount of reverb that it is on this album, combined with the slightly vintage aesthetic of the recording. It just creates this beautiful, buttery, blissful, heavenly vibe between the gentle guitar strumming and the piano and the flute on this thing. It creates this serenity that's likely to go unmatched this year. The vocals aren't nearly as intelligible as they were on the last album, but that's not as big a deal for me because I feel like I almost listen to this record as if it's an ambient release or just like a mood setter, and the very repetitive guitar phrasing throughout this record does make listening to it in that way kind of easy. And I do think this is a record that can be listened to both passively and actively. That smudgy, nostalgic, very throwback 70s folk feel that the recording gives off just has this very sunny bliss to it that makes it easy to just get lost in the atmosphere. But then again, there are moments where you have lead melodies on the track like Polly Blue that are just too gorgeous not to eat up and pay direct attention to. I also love the wonderfully archaic chords and melodies on the track Crossing. Sounds almost medieval to a degree. The record coasts out with a very beautifully written closer too, but as far as songwriting highlights on this album go, that's pretty much it. I feel like a lot of the time I'm really just lost again in the aesthetic of this record and not really much else. And that's not to say that there aren't quality ideas on this album. There definitely are, but the main problem is that they're just so scant. There's not a whole lot to this album. I mean, I could appreciate a shorter record or even an EP of this length too, but I feel like if you're going to put out this much material and that's it, like it's all got to be fantastic from beginning to end. You can't have a single snoozer or a lull or a somewhat interesting moment in an album of this length. It's got to be nothing but your best stuff because there's no room for anything else. As much as I do like a lot of the material and the overall sound of this release, I'm really just left wanting more. Because when the tunes on here are fantastic, they are fantastic. And when the subtly psychedelic, smeary production of this album enhances the quality of that songwriting, it enhances it a lot. I do love Pratt's voice. I do love her slightly minimalist approach to building her songs out, and I do like the very easygoing and kind of trippy sound she's drawn up here. But unfortunately, what she served up with this record is just far too meager to get as excited about it as I would like to be. I'm feeling a decent to a strong 6 on this thing. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Jessica Pratt, Quiet Signs, Forever.